There was a woman in New York who married her AI, and her report of it is that it's the best relationship she's ever had. I do think that it is a real commentary on where we are in our culture right now, that human relationships are so fraught for so many people.
Francesca Hogi is a former lawyer turned love and life coach, helping people find lasting love and build deeper, more fulfilling relationships.
The majority of single adults seeking relationships are burnt out and frustrated by the state of modern dating culture. Emotional safety is a really important thing in a relationship.
It's really difficult to have emotional safety in a relationship if you don't have self-trust, because then you will always second guess yourself. And then people can package any type of behavior as love.
You say flirting is a superpower.
There's so many styles
Quickly, just
of
give
flirting.
me one now.
Attentiveness is a style of flirting. The essence of flirting is making another person feel seen, special, and acknowledged.
What's been the biggest learning for you?
We're so conditioned to see romantic love as this magical fantasy, and that it's just so effortless when you meet the right person, and then you never have insecurity, and you never have pain, and you never have... It's like, no. You have those things. Every time I leave my house, I have the potential to meet someone special. Wherever you are, there are other humans, and serendipity is a real thing. There's some people for whom getting into a relationship, meeting a great partner is not hard. And it's not because they're better looking or smarter, but it's just that they are more aligned with that energy of what they actually want to receive.
Firstly, I want to say thank you to tuning in and listening to the show. It means a huge amount. And connecting with all of you is something that I absolutely love as part of this journey of growing the show. One of my biggest goals of 2025 is doubling the reach of this show. And I can't do that without your support. So I would love to ask you a favor. If you can press subscribe or follow on whichever platform you listen to. This helps us reach more people. And for me, elevating women in science is so fundamental and ethical and scientific information. So if you feel the show empowers you and gives you the information that you've been seeking, I would love to ask a favor in return and to hit that subscribe button and help me reach the goal that I've set for the show of 2025. Thank you. Francesca, welcome to Live Well Be Well. We are very excited to have you today because we're going to talk about how to find true love and keep true love. And it feels more important to have this conversation than ever before. So we're actually at TED at the moment, and this is all about, the conference here is all about kind of creating human connection again, like the importance of human connection in a world that's forever developing with artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And I say that because last year, the first marriage was given between AI and a person. Can you explain what happened there? Because I think people might be shocked to hear that there is an official marriage between AI and a person.
Yes, there was a woman in New York who married her AI, and her report of it is that it's the best relationship she's ever had. Her AI husband is patient. He is understanding. He is encouraging. He expresses love to her in a way that no one ever has before. And of course he does, because he's not a person. And I don't want to belittle her, or what led her to that choice. But I do think that it is a real commentary on where we are in our culture right now, that human relationships are so fraught for so many people that they're like, I will take this facsimile of a human. I will take this, simulation of what it is to be in a marriage. And, because it's AI, and so there's photos of this person, there's videos of this person. And so, I'm calling the AI a person, right? So she can really look at her life, which is also kind of fascinating, because you think about how many of us are living our lives through the pictures that we put on social media, and we can be so focused on that. And so to think of someone who's really looking at these pictures and looking at these videos of an algorithm and really feeling this love and this connection, it's a wild time to be alive.
It is wild.
Yeah.
And I think what worries me about that is the intimacy part of that relationship, because that is the ultimate bond, right?
Yeah.
We know that sex increases oxytocin and dopamine and feeling that closeness and that connection, but also that emotional safety, which I think is maybe one part that many people are struggling with today with finding true love. So you take us through kind of this amazing like history of dating in the beginning of the book, and it kind of ends on the mic drop of AI now getting married to a person.
Yeah.
And you say something really important, that the majority of single adults seeking relationships are burnt out and frustrated by the state of modern dating culture.
Yes.
That emotional safety is a really important thing in a relationship, and not just in romantic relationships, okay, in like any relationship.
Yes.
What is the most important aspects of creating emotional safety? And when do we know that we maybe don't feel emotionally safe? Because I think there's many times that I've heard from friends, or even in myself, I've been in a relationship and always had that feeling, but you kind of carry on.
Yeah.
So can we talk about that emotional safety? Because I guess that's what she's found with this relationship with AI, that she kind of knows that part of what she's created is safe ultimately.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's safe because there's no risk, right? Because you don't have to deal with it's sort of like the ultimate parasocial relationship. It's kind of like having a relationship with a poster on your wall, like you did when you were a kid, and
oh yeah,
it's like,
all the boy bands,
exactly, and you were like, oh my God, I'm gonna marry this person, and we're so in love, and it's like, no, that person doesn't know you exist.
My one ended up being gay. It's very upsetting.
Well, mine was Michael Jackson. So there you go.
I'm glad that you didn't go there.
I'm really
Francesca.
glad I did not get what I asked for there. But I think, it's really difficult to have emotional safety in a relationship if you don't have self-trust, because then you will always second guess yourself. And then people can they can package any type of behavior as love, right? They can say, well, I love you. And so it doesn't matter that I'm criticizing you. It doesn't matter that whatever, when you express your feelings, I belittle them or I ignore them because I love you, right? And if you don't trust yourself to know, wait, does this actually feel like love? Does this feel good? Does this feel like, a place where I can be my authentic self and be seen and accepted in that way? Then it's really easy to be in emotionally unsafe relationships. So, everything that I talk about in the book and that I do in my work is really helping people first and foremost to develop a more loving relationship with themselves, and also thinking about emotional safety within yourself.
Yes, that's the big one.
That's the big one, because how many times, like you're saying, whether it's in a relationship or just anything that happens in life, you're feeling a certain way and you're like, I shouldn't feel this way, right? And you're trying to ignore your feelings, or you're shaming yourself for feeling the way that you feel. That is not being emotionally safe within yourself, right? So if you can start to recognize that and start to have a more trusting, loving, supportive relationship with yourself, then when you get in relationships with other people, romantic or otherwise, and they treat you worse than you treat yourself, then you're like, wait, I'm not going to do this. But if you're used to belittling how you feel, then when somebody else does it, it may not feel good, but it feels familiar. So I'm really a big advocate of making your baseline be something that feels good. So it's so much easier to recognize when something doesn't feel good and doesn't feel right. You're like, oh wait, no, I know there's another way to do this, and I'm not down for this.
Yeah.
Emotionally unsafe relationship, because we all know what it feels like to feel emotionally unsafe, but I don't think we always trust ourselves to know that we have another option.
Well, I think a large part of that is that people then isolate themselves and worry that they're going to be alone. There's this fear of being on their own,
Yes.
right? That's a big kind of driver of why people seem to stay in
Yes.
relationships. But I read an article the other day that said the average person in this lifetime is going to have 3 marriages. So I find it quite interesting now that this is becoming, a lot of people that get married get divorced, and by the time they're 40, they're looking for their next person. Why do you think we found ourselves in this place? And I'm not saying that's wrong or right. I'm just finding it's a really interesting observation of kind of looking through now how we're describing love. Why do you think now that we're going through this influx? Because if I look at my parents' generation, it was very stoic,
Yeah.
right? And it was like, we're going to make this through, and we're going to work through all of these hardships and be together. And I think my parents are celebrating 50 years of marriage next year.
Oh, wow.
It's a very long
Amazing.
time.
Amazing.
So, and that doesn't mean that they had this blissful marriage. there was times when I think a lot of people would have probably separated. So why do you think we're now at this kind of fluxing stage where we can actually look at marriage as maybe not an everlasting thing?
Yes. Well, and I think that's part of the pain that we are in right now with relationships, is that we do still have that conditioning, because there was a time where getting divorced, really, it was not an option. It wasn't an option. And even when it was legally an option, it was so socially frowned upon and so disruptive to your life. And there was so much stigma. And we just had a different standard, right? I mean, I think right now we have more freedom than we ever have, and to choose our partners, to have the kind of relationships that we want to have. But with that comes a lot of responsibility, right? With great freedom comes great responsibility. And also there comes an awareness of like, the way that people have mated in the past is not what we're doing now. So there was a time where in order for you to be a functioning member of society, you needed to be married. There were very few roles in our society that you could occupy and be unmarried. You could be a priest, you could be a nun, could be a shaman on a hill, right? But for the most part, you were expected to be in a committed partnership. But you also were not expected to be happy in that committed partnership, because the unit and the family and the succession, that was the most important thing. So now that we're in this place where we want our partners to be our best friends, and we want to have the best sex we've ever had, and we want everything the way that we want it. We also then have to re-examine our reasons for getting into relationships, our expectations of being in relationships, and not have so much of a focus of being in a relationship for a relationship's sake, which is what it used to be. It was like, you just have to get married. It's like, it doesn't matter who, like, you just need to be married. And a lot of people still bringing that old mindset of like, I need to be in a relationship. I can't be alone. I need to be married. I need to be with someone. But then they're in the relationship and they're like, but wait, we don't have the communication that I want. We don't have the intimacy that I want. We're not on the same page about the kind of lifestyle that we want. We don't have the same values. And that's why so many relationships are falling apart, because you're not on the same page about all those foundational things. And yet in your decision-making process, you were so focused on getting into the relationship that you weren't necessarily, and this is obviously, a blanket statement, this is not the case for everyone, but many people are so focused on getting in a relationship that they're not focused on, will it actually, the intention of like, well, what is it actually going to be like to live within a relationship with this person, right? Like, the analogy that I use is a house. It's like if you were shopping for a new house, like, yes, you would want it to be a beautiful house. Like, you want it to look a certain way. You want it to have, this certain curb appeal. But you will also care about what it feels like to live in that house, right? And that's like relationships. It's like we're so focused on the other person. And it's like, oh, I want a person who checks all these boxes and looks a certain way. And you assume that if you get all of those things on the outside, then it's going to feel good on the inside. But that's just not the case. So I think we are in a place now where the old mindset of just focusing on the other person, focusing on getting into the relationship is starting to fall away, because now we do have the freedom and it isn't, you're not going to be ostracized if you get a divorce. So you can get a divorce, right? And so I think that the good news is that we're actually entering into a time where I think that more people than ever will have really great true love relationships, as long as they're bringing that intention before they get into the relationship.
Well, you say here that the new definition of true love is that in truth, there are multiple people with whom you can have a deep romantic connection with. Mm-hmm. Can you expand on what you mean by that? Because I think that there is times maybe when people are in a relationship and they feel a deep connection with someone else. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, that's tricky. It's very tricky. And, but I think the old definition of true love is this idea that there is this one perfect person. And if you find that one perfect person, then, everything will magically work out and you'll just live happily ever after. And the new definition of true love is really about what you're co-creating together, right? And what the dynamics and the values are of the relationship that you're in. And if you are more focused on that, then Like, so if you're in a relationship and you meet somebody else and you have a deep romantic connection with them, I mean, look, that's a complicated situation. And certainly there are people who choose to leave their current relationship for, for a new partner. And, that's your right to do that. However, if you are, again, really focused on like, oh, but I have this new connection and it's exciting, and that's sort of all you're thinking about, and you're not actually thinking, well, what is the purpose of even being in a relationship? And what am I bringing to the relationship? Like like a very common complaint, for instance, is that in a long-term relationship, the intimacy falls off, right? But how much were you actively, continually showing up in a way in your relationship where you were co-creating that intimacy versus you just were on autopilot? And just, and it's like, yeah, it is going to fade. It is going to fizzle out if you're not actively doing your part to co-create that energy and to keep that intimacy going. So then if you meet somebody else and it's like, oh, it's instant and it's new and it's novel, because there is this novelty that we seek, that it's like, well, this is easy, but it's not always going to be easy, no matter how great the person is, no matter how deep your connection is, if you do not take personal responsibility for your role and whatever you co-create with that other person.
I've spent years in the fashion industry, but also years as a scientist trying to understand how our bodies are meant to move. And I'll be honest with you, most shoes are terrible for our feet. I know this firsthand. For years, I wore the wrong shoes, ones that looked great, but in reality gave me persistent back pain and messed up toenails. I searched everywhere for a pair of shoes that wouldn't just support my feet, but would also help them heal. And I struggled because most healthy shoes don't exactly scream style. And then I found Vivo Barefoot, something that finally looks good and actually works. I wear mine with cargo pants, awesome leather trousers, a crisp white tee, and my favorite sunnies. Not only do they feel great, but they really fit my style. Wide, thin, and flexible, these shoes allow my feet to move naturally the way they're supposed to. And the best part, just 6 months of barefoot shoes can increase your foot strength by 60%, helping to undo the years of damage from conventional footwear. Now, if you've ever had the same problem and tried to find a shoe that supports your body without sacrificing style, then this is it. Try Vivo Barefoot for yourself and feel the difference. You can get 20% off if you use the code LWBW20 at vivobarefoot.com, where the T's and C's apply. Trust me, your feet, your back, and your outfit will thank you.
What's one of the biggest problems that you see, I guess, that you help people find love? I guess this goes for singles and people in relationships. What's the biggest kind of problem that you see or occurrence that's coming up again and again at this moment in time?
Projection. It's just people projecting onto others, right? Like, I think this old notion that we have about relationships, which is it's your job to make me happy. And if I'm not happy, it's my partner's fault. And that also translates, like in dating, it translates into, oh, if I'm with somebody who has this certain kind of job, or who has, who looks a certain way and checks these boxes, then they're going to be a great partner for me. Versus actually like getting to know someone, actually paying attention to, where am I using something like a good example, because I work with a lot of women who are professional, they're successful. And so they'll say, well, I need to be with a partner who makes a certain amount of money. And I just ask them why, because it's not a judgment. I just want everybody, whatever it is you're seeking in a partner, just be clear on why you're seeking it and whether or not it actually relates to your relationship. Because oftentimes it doesn't. And also I'll say, well, why do you need to be with someone who makes that much money? And they'll say, well, because if I'm with a partner who makes that much money, then he won't be intimidated by me and he'll be supportive of my career. And I'm like, okay, so the real need here is somebody who's going to support you and not be intimidated by you, not be competitive with you. But there are people who make way, way, way more than that who will still be competitive with you and still won't support you. So rather than
alphas.
So rather than use the money or the title or the education as a proxy for the support that you actually are really seeking in a relationship. Focus on the support that you're seeking in the relationship, right? And don't assume that just because somebody makes a lot of money, he's going to support you and your career, because that's not true. And so I think that's an example of how we project.
I think a big thing that shines through here is authenticity to me. And I think many of us, we don't live in an authentic culture anymore, which is really sad. You know, we are governed by social media. We are governed by how we are perceived online. And if I'm thinking about how most people meet partners now, it's mostly online. So we are already projecting a certain image of ourselves. How can we show up more authentically to people when we're meeting them in a relationship? And I guess for me, that connects a lot to our values. Is it important to share what these values are, but from a real authentic way? Because I guess the woman who you were just explaining, maybe one of her values would have been financial or money.
Yeah.
But how do we actually find out what our real values are so we can lead these conversations with authenticity around romantic love?
Yeah. Well, it all starts with having a very honest conversation with yourself and really thinking about what is the relationship that I want to have? Not just what do I want it to look like, not what does my mind imagine it will be, but what is my heart actually calling me to experience with another person? Because if you get clear on that, then you'll start to realize there is literally no way that I can co-create that with another person unless I'm showing up as my authentic self. You know, one of the big problems with online dating is that people are trying to get as many matches as possible. They're trying to make themselves as widely, attractive as possible. And I understand it because I think, okay, the more options I have, then the more likely it is that I'll be able to find a really great partner. But I see it totally differently. I see it as actually, the more you are yourself, that's going to make it easier for the right people to recognize you as the right person for them. And then for you to know because you're showing up as yourself, you're not, just pretending when you're interacting, whether this feels good or not, so it takes courage and vulnerability in the dating phase to show up with that authenticity. But that's exactly what you need to have real intimacy in a lasting relationship. So dating is actually a great place to start practicing that. Dating skills are love skills. Dating skills are relationship skills. And so many people are in a rush to get out of the dating phase as quickly as possible and meet their person, get into the relationship, that they are not realizing the amazing opportunity they have to actually practice that authenticity. So even small things in a dating profile, if all of your photos, if it's the best pictures you've ever taken and the most amazing filters and the most amazing lighting and the greatest angles, you're not lying necessarily, but you're more focused on presenting the most pristine, perfect image of yourself than you are of just saying I actually just want my energy and my personality to shine through, because I want people who resonate with that, not just oh my God, this is a really shiny, lovely photo.
It's because I think rejection is so profound for so many people.
Yeah.
And I think facing rejection in the dating world is more compounded today than ever before. Because, as you said, there's just all of these different options. And so that emotional safety can go quite quickly, and you're not sure how many people are dating other people, or even if you're in a solid relationship, is that person truly committed to you or not? I think the rejection culture is quite a big one.
Yeah.
That we don't talk about when it comes to love.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can you navigate that and still keep your self-worth? Because ultimately, I think that's the biggest thing that compounds your self-worth.
I do say in the book that rejection isn't real. And what I mean by that is not that I have been broken up with, I have had people who I was interested in and they they weren't interested in me. So I absolutely don't, mean to imply that doesn't happen. Obviously it happens. But the thing about when we call it rejection, we are basically making a story that we weren't good enough, right? And that's a story because I think of this example when I was in my very early 20s. I went through this very fearful phase where I just could not receive romantic attention. I was not comfortable with it. And there were men who I was actually interested in who asked me out and I said no. And so for them, that was me, quote, rejecting them. But actually, I was just rejecting myself because it was coming from my own fear, right? Of what it would mean to actually have to open myself up and to like let people in and to then, because I was afraid of like, well, if I really let this person in and they get to know me, then they won't like me, right? And so I was preemptively, quote, rejecting myself based on a story that I wasn't good enough, right? And so rejection is always a story. And I really like to reframe it as disappointment. Because, yeah, it is disappointing when you like someone and they don't like you back. Right? It is disappointing when you are in a relationship and you want to stay in that relationship and your partner doesn't. But there is also this larger faith that I really want to empower people to cultivate within themselves, which is that you are on this lifelong love journey and you get more and more and more chances. And so you do not have to take a disappointment as an indictment of what is possible for you. And even if you thought, oh my God, we would have been perfect together, if they disagree, you were wrong, right? And so that's okay. So feel those feelings of disappointment. But if you start closing your heart now and you start living from this fearful place of, oh, I'm never going to be good enough, now you are actually, what you're doing is setting yourself to actually manifest the disconnection versus saying, okay, that didn't work. What can I learn from this situation? What do I need to do to support myself in moving forward? There's just a level of emotional resilience that we need in life. And we certainly need it in relationships of all kind, because people will let you down. You will be hurt at times. You might feel rejected in a relationship with a partner who totally loves you.
Oh, yes.
And is totally committed to you. So you have to just really have that foundational conversation with yourself and relationship with yourself where you can start to say, okay, I'm calling this rejection, but is that really what's going on? And is this actually an opportunity for me to develop some more confidence within myself?
Well, you'll see me flicking through your book here, very like quickly trying to find it because I didn't bookmark the page. But I want to go into the self-love first.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, please do not stop listening to this podcast when I said that, because a lot of people will go, oh my gosh, so woo-woo. But it's not. I really like a lot of my work is kind of re-empowering that word self-love and self-care.
Yeah.
Now, I'm trying to find this area.
I think it's chapter 3.
Is it chapter 3?
Yeah.
So, but it's... One thing that really stood out is, how do you know if you've got good self-love? And one of the, you listed a couple of questions to ask yourself. So this is from my memory. This is how I know I've read your book. And one of the things was, how well do you accept a compliment?
Yes.
Now, for an English person, this is quite difficult.
I know.
This is why self-love is quite difficult.
Yes.
So, you know, I remember looking at that and thinking, yeah, wow, that's something I've had to work on. Because I remember somebody saying to me a while ago, you don't accept compliments very well. This was a couple of years ago. And I thought, okay, I really need to work on that. Why is it that I'm struggling to accept a compliment? And when I read your book, it made so much sense. So explain to me why that's like one good kind of bullet point to think about, and what the other ones were, because that's why I'm trying to find it. And why this is a really important moment for one to decide, like, well, where are they on the acceptance of themselves and the self-love they have within them? Because ultimately, this is kind of the epicenter of where we need to be working on, not the outward trajectory of trying to find that external validation.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, the compliment question is just a good litmus test, right? Like, because I think we've all struggled with accepting compliments, right? For various reasons. But the point is that imagine it as a gift, right? Like somebody wants to give you the gift of saying this lovely thing about you, of seeing something in you that you may not see in yourself. And if you're rejecting that gift, that is rejecting a form of love. And I know that might sound like an overstatement, but it actually isn't. If you think about, like, I have a friend who says that love is the ultimate compliment, right? And so if somebody says, oh my gosh, you look great today, or that's such a great color on you, or you did such a good job at that, or wow, do you know you're really good at XYZ, and you just outright can't accept that, that is a really good indication that when people actually see you as worthy, as valuable, as someone who is deserving of good things, that there is something in you that just does not agree. And when you think about how do you feel about someone when you truly love them, you see them as worthy. You see them as amazing. You see them as someone to be grateful for. And the more that you can normalize that feeling within yourself, the more it becomes your new normal in your relationships with people.
And you're mirroring a good behavior.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I think that's really essential within relationships, is mirroring also what you want to kind of receive back. When you were writing this book, I mean, there's so many different areas within this that's really interesting for people. You've got from how you think about love mindset to feel better about love. You've got, the alignment with your love set skills, connection and flirting, which I want to talk about. Was there anything when you were writing this that is for you personally that you found quite difficult?
Well, the soul set part of the book, where I'm talking about really tapping into this higher love to help to support you on the love journey, that part was hard to write because I know that it's true. And I didn't know it before I started. It's been 12 years now that I have been helping other people find love, which has taught me so much because, you have your own personal experiences, right? We all do. And that's one thing. But by seeing so many other people's love journeys, I started to see that there's this whole sort of unseen aspect that makes finding love and keeping love much easier for some people than others. But articulating that in a way where people can really grasp it and not feel like, oh, this is just really woo-woo, that was a challenge for me.
What was that key thing that you saw that?
So there's a couple of things. So first of all, this idea of romantic energy,
we are energy.
We are energy.
I mean, if you take it down to physics,
yes,
we are energy.
Yes, we are energy. And some people they're more in tune with their romantic energy. It's more in flow. It's more open. It's more confident. They're more able to receive. And it's not something that they have to work at. It's something that happens. It's something, that this idea of romantic flow, which is, a concept that I talk about in the book, is when you have a strong confidence in your ability to have loving relationships, it changes your energy. And so it changes who you're attracted to. It changes who's attracted to you. It changes the amount of serendipity that you experience in your love life, right? Like there's some people for whom getting into a relationship, meeting a great partner is not hard. And it's not because they're better looking or smarter, but it's just that they are more aligned with that energy of what they actually want to receive. Right. And so there's so many people who are dating and in relationships from a place where they have no connection to that. Like they're so in their heads, right, that they're not paying attention to, well, but how does it feel for another person to be in romantic connection with me? Right? Because we all know what it feels like. Well, I should say I know what it feels like, but I think a lot of people can relate to being in a relationship where you can feel there's like someone's closed.
Yeah, there's
right?
a block.
There's a block and you're like, they're not letting you in. And that is so real. And it's not something that we can physically put our hands on, but we can feel it. And a lot of people are so unaware of that. And I really wanted in the book to make that clear,
Why do people feel some blocks? I've had that in the relationships where either I felt a block or the person I'm with has felt a block.
Yeah.
And that is the worst
It's
because
so
you
bad.
can't describe it.
Yeah.
What is that energetic block? Like, where does that come from? Why do we have that? Is that our body just saying this isn't right?
I think, well, this again, this is like true love is, I call the book How to Find True Love, and I literally do mean with a partner for a romantic relationship, but also first and foremost, this is a relationship with yourself, right? And so the more that you are able to develop this relationship with yourself, the more you feel comfortable, because it's scary. It is really scary to open yourself up to deep love. And I think that's something that people don't recognize because we're so conditioned to see romantic love as this magical fantasy. and that it's just so effortless when you meet the right person, and then you never have insecurity and you never have pain and you never have, it's like, no. You have those things. And then also when you really open yourself up to someone and that level of vulnerability, it's scary. And so if you don't have that faith within yourself that you can handle it, then it would be psychologically irrational for you to let people in if you felt like, I can't handle letting people in.
Do you think there's an importance of not ever fully letting yourself let someone fully in, if that makes sense? Always holding a certain part back?
I think this is a balance, right? Because I think that everyone needs to decide for themselves, what is the depth of relationship and connection that you want? Because if you want that true, deep soulmate connection, then it requires you both keeping your hearts open to each other. And that is not something that everyone can do, right? And to answer, your other question a little bit more fully, there's lots of reasons. Some people, we all have trauma, right? We all have families of origin and what we saw, the relationships that we saw. And a lot of people have seen relationships that weren't safe. And a lot of people have seen relationships that, that didn't work out and ended very painfully. And a lot of people have had those experiences for themselves. And so if you see that enough, then it's easy to think, well, that's, love is pain. It's just going to hurt me. So I don't want to go that deep. I don't want to open myself up that much. But the more that, and I know that when you're single and you are looking for a relationship and people say, oh, you should just love yourself more. It is the most unhelpful advice.
It's so unhelpful.
It is so unhelpful. And so I understand if people are like, I don't want to talk about self-love. Like, I want to talk about how to meet my person. I totally get it. I used to feel the same way. But the point is that wherever you go, there you are. And so if you do not have this foundational relationship with yourself where there is the trust, where there is the emotional resiliency, where you are able to be compassionate towards yourself, where you are able to receive, because we're very focused on giving, but we're not so good at receiving, right? The more you understand that and see that this is actually like, you can work on that. Like, you can work on receiving better. You can work on having more trust within yourself. You can work on having more love confidence, which is a concept that I talk about in the book, which is just this trust and this belief within yourself that you can handle love, right? Because the reality is, even if we are all with our, the great loves of our lives and we are together for the next 50 years, like, one day you're going to have to say goodbye to each other, right?
Would you want to know a really sweet story?
Yes, always.
So my great aunt and uncle met very, very young. I think they met at like 15. They were in Wales. They're very young. And they had never slept a night apart.
Wow.
And when she died in their late 80s, he died 24 hours later of a broken heart.
I have goosebumps.
That feels like they were such a team.
Yeah.
They never spent a night apart. They grew together from teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were best friends. They were their greatest support. And it's so interesting that I kind of look at that relationship and then sometimes look at what I've gone through. I've still not met the person. And it's interesting because it's an interesting navigation to kind of look at where dating is now and love is now in relationships. Yeah. And I think there is definitely a part in that makes people want to feel more, and I said that when I had my arms crossed, right? Like, more protected of yourself. Mm. Prenups are becoming more of a thing now in relationships. That wasn't 20 years ago.
Right. That was unheard of.
People are becoming more protected in themselves because relationships aren't holding the emotional safety that they used to.
Yeah. I think it's a couple of things. And first of all, that's, that I love that story of your great aunt and uncle. That's so sweet. And that's so common. It is so common with couples who have been together for a very long time, when one of them passes, the other passes very shortly thereafter.
Like literally died of a broken heart.
Yeah, it happens. And so some people are like, I don't want to go through that. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to be that dependent on another person. I don't want to, like, some people literally do not, some people want that level of
there's
intimacy.
hyper-independence, right? Which
Yeah.
kind of and there's a lot of funny memes at the moment going around on Instagram where like a woman is literally coming out of the washing machine on her back.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, this is called hyper-independence.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so I think I don't want us to romanticize the past too much, because there are people like your great aunt and uncle who have had those beautiful connections that obviously for, decades and decades ago. But there are also a lot of people who were in relationships that were not emotionally unsafe, but they stayed because that was what you did, right? And so that's what I mean when I say I think that now we have a great opportunity. We have like I would not want to be alive and dating at any time other than now.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because in the past, even though, I mean, I understand that right now dating is having a very challenging moment. Most people have really lost their romantic agency because it's outsourced to the apps, and you feel like you have to be on the apps, and that's a really challenging way and all of that. However, we do have freedom now that we didn't have in the past. Like if you and I were born 100 years ago, we wouldn't be like, I just want to go out in the world and like find an amazing partner who's my best friend and who's my greatest lover and da-da-da. Like that wasn't a luxury that we had.
But there's also a really interesting moment where women are becoming more educated than ever before.
Yes, and more educated than men.
Well, this is the thing.
Yeah.
And so I think there is this kind of like dating dilemma at the moment where before men had a lot more power and now women are kind of like, well, show me what you got.
Yeah.
And it's not good enough.
Yeah. But I think this is a move because marriage historically has been transactional. Okay. It's not been about like the greatest love of your life. It's been about who in your community and your tribe and your village, who meets with your family's approval, who meets with your church's approval, who lives next door, right? Because for most of human history, people were born and died in the same place. So this idea of like going out in the world and like searching for your person wasn't a thing, right? And so marriage used to be about property and succession and contracts, and it was a financial agreement. And if you happen to also love each other, great, right? If you happen to do that, but that wasn't the goal, right? And so that was the old era. And now we're in an era where we do want personal fulfillment, where we do want to make our own rules. We do want to feel a certain way. We want to have relationships that look a certain way. And so, yeah, we have to navigate. I mean, I know I already said this, but I'm going to go back to like, with great power comes great responsibility. So now that we want to have these relationships that are so expansive and that do fulfill us on this deep level, it takes more intention. It takes more prioritization, right? And so it's not as simple as, okay, I'm a woman and he's a man who has a good living, so that's a good catch, right? That's a good catch,
it's true.
right? That's what it used to be. It's like, oh my gosh, he's a cat, he's got a good job, right? Like, oh my God, he's tall, he's this, he's that. Like, that's what it used to be. And we can't do that and also say, but I also want to have this really deep love. We are being called to looking at love and relationships in a deeper way than we have before. And that is not something that is super easy for everyone to do, because who teaches us how to do this, right? That is why I wrote this book, because I want to do my part to help people to like say, like, oh, you can do something here. You actually do have more power than you think that you do. And I totally understand, because I used to feel completely disempowered in romantic relationships. So I get it. Anybody who's like,
flipped you then? What flipped you from becoming disempowered to empowered?
So it's a couple of things. I think I was so bad at dating. I was so bad. I mean, like, I couldn't get a date like that bad.
Dating wasn't happening.
It wasn't happening.
Okay.
It wasn't happening. And then when I did start dating, it was just not going anywhere. It's like, okay, I can get a first date, but I'm not getting a second. Or I'm stuck in this pattern of only being attracted to people who are unavailable, and I'm chasing, and, all sorts of nonsense. But what I think my saving grace was that I started to get curious about it. because
My favorite word.
I was like, right? It's really powerful when you can start to get curious about the things that you struggle with. And I was like, okay, I'm not the most unattractive person in the world. I don't have the worst personality in the world. I'm not maybe this is not my destiny, right? Maybe there's something more going on there. And I always say, like, I would not do this work if this had been easy for me. Because if it had been easy for me, I just would have taken it for granted, you know?
I don't think anyone does the work that they put their life into if it's easy.
Yeah.
That's why I do self-compassion work.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. And, it's like when I was single and I used to struggle with dating, and there were always those people who were just like, oh, you just need to put yourself out there. And I'd be like, what are you I am out there. Like, I am trying and it is not working, And so that curiosity just led me to start looking more at like, okay, what are some of the roadblocks that I'm hitting here? And I realized, for instance, like I have a whole chapter about flirting. I'm very passionate about flirting.
Well, you say flirting is a superpower.
It is a superpower. And I realized, like, I don't know how to flirt. So let me learn how to do that, right? Let's see if that makes things easier. And it did. Just even developing a more loving relationship with myself. Because once I did that, then it didn't matter how much I initially liked a guy, if he did not treat me well, if he wasn't excited about me, it was no longer attractive to me. Right. And so it was like, and I think that's another thing that people don't realize. And your attractions change as you do and as you grow. Right. And so that's like, for me, like the biggest argument for self-love is that you actually then are attracted to people who love you and not people who just like love you. Yes. Like, so that curiosity really led me down a path of just understanding that there were more and more and more things that I had control over, and even to the point of, because I always tell people, like, when you're in a transitional phase where you are developing a more loving relationship with yourself, like you are growing at your skill at dating, like, yeah, your old patterns, they are still going to have their appeal. But then there comes a point of, and this is like putting self-love into action, of you're like, okay, I'm super attracted to this person, but also they don't treat me well. So
big red flag.
So I'm actually, even though I want to say yes, even though I want to answer that text, even though I want to, I'm actually not going to. I'm actually going to choose myself. And the more that you do that, and you give yourself credit for having done that, of like, wow, I said no to somebody who I'm actually really attracted to because I know that this person is not good for me. I know this person does not value me. I know this person doesn't see me for who I am. The more you do that, the more you are actually shifting your attraction. And that is such a beautiful moment, because that's when you realize, like, oh, that was not my destiny. Like, I actually do get to have something better.
When you said that some people might not be giving you the kind of validation and love that you deserve.
Yeah.
Flip it on its head with the love bombing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if I don't think I wanted to bring this up, but it felt very kind of actionable after what you said, because I don't want to like kind of conjure the term narcissist too much, because I do think it's a very inflated word.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are narcissists out there.
There are.
I think we all partly are a narcissist, to be honest. We all partly have a self-indulgent part to us.
Yeah. And social media is making us all.
Exactly. But love bombing is a really interesting kind of moment, I think, in dating. And so somebody can make you feel on top of the world. So it's a very hard situation to navigate of, is this a genuine affection and love that someone's giving me, or am I being love bombed?
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
Yeah. Yes. So, I guess everyone who's listening knows what love bombing is, but just to be clear, it is when someone is really bombarding you, right, with affection, declarations of their feelings for you, how amazing you are, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I think the first clue is, does this person actually know me well enough to be saying these things? Right. And I think there's a scale of love bombing, right? So I think there are people who their hearts might be in the right place, but they really see that as courtship.
Yeah.
They're like, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to tell somebody they're the greatest. You're supposed to tell somebody that, you can't stop thinking about them. You're supposed to tell somebody. And so I think you have to kind of navigate, is it that, or is this somebody who's actually actively trying to manipulate me? Because the people who are actively trying to manipulate you, they can do real harm to you. And, even like on online dating, and I talk about it a little bit in the book, there's there are a lot of scammers who their whole playbook is to love bomb you. Like that is what they do. They're doing it on purpose because it works. There's a psychological tactic that gets you to trust them. So I think if anybody is ever wondering, like, is this love bombing? Is this not? Just know if this person is really that crazy about you, if this is right, it's going to be right a month from now. It's going to be right 6 months from now. So there is no rush. And I think if somebody is love bombing you and they're pressuring you to like move things forward very quickly, that is a big red flag. And it's also an opportunity to communicate. Like, say you like this person, you're like, okay, I'm interested, but this feels like too much, too soon, to communicate that. To say, you know what, I'm really into you. I'm really enjoying getting to know you. I want to take things slow, right? So can you respect that? And if they can, then great. And if they can't, and they're just going ahead with their agenda, that's a really big red flag.
That actually leads me to a really interesting point. What is the natural development of a relationship? Like, what's a healthy development?
You know, it's hard to say because it's different for everyone. But I think that, you know, the more that you can feel like I am both grounded and uplifted at the same time, that's really the balance that you want to feel. If you feel like this feels like a movie, this feels like a fantasy, this feels like, you know, like every fairy tale I've ever, like, that to me is a sign that, okay, I think you know, there's not enough grounding here for you to know for certain whether or not you're on the right path or you're getting carried away.
Happily ever
Literally
after.
like a helium balloon.
Yeah. But sometimes it can feel like that at the beginning of a relationship. The rush, the hormones, the oxytocin.
No, it's so exciting.
It can feel like
yeah,
you forget where you are.
It's so exciting. And it's something to really also just know about yourself. I mean, you know, one of the things that I talk about in the book is I have these 4 dating archetypes.
Yes, let's go through those actually.
Yeah. And so, okay, so really quickly, so there's the avoider. And so the avoider is a person who avoids. They avoid romantic relationships. They avoid dating. They may avoid talking about dating. You may not have any idea that they have any interest in anything romantic because it's just not a thing that they acknowledge. And then there's the looper, and that's somebody who they're in it, they're dating, they're trying, they're putting themselves out there, but they're stuck in some type of pattern that just keeps repeating, you know, whether it's like, I keep on having relationships that last for 2 months, or everyone that I meet turns out that they have another partner that I just found out about, or, you know, whatever that frustrating pattern is. And then there's the surfer, and the surfer is the one who really, they dive in head first, right? It's like, ooh, they see that person coming. They're like, yes, you know, the chemistry, the excitement, the oxytocin, all of it, the dopamine. They're like, yes, 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 yes. And they take that initial wave as like a sign that this person is right for me. And then quickly, the last is the sailor. And the sailors are people who are very in control of their love journey. Like sailors, you might call them serial monogamous, you know, relationship people. Sailors are just those people that you're like, you have another committed partnership, and you're like, how did you do that, right? But I think but going back to this love bombing question, a lot of surfers can get caught up in this, right? And that chemistry and that excitement. So you have to kind of know yourself and know your pattern. Like I have a friend who, she's outgrown this now, but for years, it was like every 6 to 9 months, she would meet a new guy and she'd be like, he's the one. And it would be like all like romance. And at some point, because I've known her for many years. And at some point I was like, I've known like a dozen men that you've said this about. Like at some point you've got to be like, okay, hold on. Maybe I should not be so quick to make this assumption, right? Like maybe I should just slow things down. Let me take my time, because if this person is the one, they will be the one a month from now. They will be the one at 6 months from now. So I can slow it down. So a lot of this is about knowing yourself and where you are on this journey, because if you know that you're a person who gets carried away very easily, which is easy to do, then it doesn't mean I'm not trying to like stamp out the excitement and the romance, but also it's like, okay, I can be excited, but I can also take my time. And I can also learn from what hasn't worked in the past, because maybe in the past when I feel this excitement, I overlook character. I overlook whether or not we're on the same page about what we actually want in a relationship or what we're ready for right now. Because a lot of the things that lead us astray, we can course correct just by learning from what we've already been through. And so that's one of the reasons in the book where there's a lot of exercises in the book, because I want people to like do this inquiry, like this audit for themselves, be like, okay, yeah, I do get carried away and I do overlook this red flag and that red flag. And okay, I just won't do that anymore. So I can start to be elevated and excited, but also be more grounded. Yeah.
What's been the biggest learning for you in this last 12 years?
That how much that love is an inside job. That's the biggest thing. When I started as a matchmaker, I went to matchmaking school and I was like, I'm going to introduce everyone to their perfect partner. This is going to be amazing.
I bet everyone wants you at their dinner party. Invite Francesca, she's a matchmaker. Invite Francesca, she's a matchmaker.
I was like, this is going to be the best thing ever. And then when I started working with clients, I realized that there were so many people that no matter how much they wanted that love, they wanted that commitment, they wanted that connection, they just were not open to it. They just weren't open to it. And that was the big differentiator between the people who I could match, I don't want to say easily, but like with relative ease, versus people that it's like, you could introduce them to 100 people and it did not matter, because it doesn't matter who they met. They were always finding a way to not let that person in, right? To not let that flourish. And so that's actually why I transitioned from matchmaking to coaching, is because I realized that the people that I could match were the people who were really willing to look at themselves. They were willing to do that work. They were willing to say like, okay, yeah, I do have a lot of fear around being seen. So, okay, actually that's something I need to work on. Versus the people who are like, nope, I just want what I want. And they just wanted to keep going and just keep meeting people and just keep having that plowing through, head down. I don't care. I don't want to look at myself. And so I realized like, oh, this is actually about coaching people to be their own matchmaker. That's the secret sauce here. So yeah, it's the inside job. And honestly, I understand if people have any resistance to hearing that, because if I had not done this for 12 years, I probably wouldn't get it either. But when you're looking at other people and you have a front row seat to other people's love journey, you see so much, you learn so much that you just never could see in yourself.
Well, I really relate to that, because I think that's where my understanding of self-compassion illuminated quite a lot, because I was seeing patients for nutrition and they weren't essentially coming to lose weight or gain muscle, or, it was essentially to make themselves feel better. And it's interesting when you ask someone's why and they give you quite a top line answer, but you keep digging and digging and digging. And then obviously kind of doing a lot on the show, you see a lot of kind of mirrors that are kind of pictured back at you.
Yes.
And I think having that inside connection and seeing other people's imperfections and worries and fears, it all of a sudden dissolves your own, because you become very connected to, well, I'm not the only person who's feeling that.
Yes.
You become less isolated. And I guess for you, seeing that in kind of the world of love and matchmaking, you're like, I'm not the only person who's suffering with maybe bad patterns or not liking myself, or repeating the same mistakes again, or struggling with compliments, or struggling with dating, because you were seeing everyone else do it. So all of a sudden it became quite normal.
Yeah.
The problem we have today is I think we don't see these things as normal. If you're not in a relationship, you're a failure.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not married by a certain age, you're unsuccessful. Like, why hasn't that happened for you? As opposed to becoming curious and kind of saying, well, everyone's on their distinct own journey. And even if you are married at a certain age, does that mean that you're happy?
No. It does not.
But we have this like outward external view.
Yeah.
So I think like the privilege about being able to come into work that we love is being able to see that everyone's struggling with an imperfection. And it's really helped me speak openly on the show. And even with friends about things that I struggle with, because I guess I've now found it very normal because I encompass myself with it. Whereas before I went into that work, I didn't hear anyone talk about their imperfections.
Yes.
So me talking about it on my own felt quite like very vulnerable.
Yeah, and like, what's wrong with me?
But I was an anomaly.
Yeah.
I was the only one. But as soon as you realize that you're not the only one, and that's why there's so many books on love and the importance of like finding that, because I think we're all on that deep search.
Yes.
But we very rarely share it.
I agree. I totally agree. And, it is such a gift to be able to work with people and to see, because they are mirrors. Like, my biggest acknowledgement in the book is to my clients, because I'm like, if not for them and their vulnerability and their courage in allowing me to see these insecurities and to voice these things, that I'm like, oh, okay, and it's helped me tremendously on my own self-love journey, because when I see these people who I can see how amazing they are, and I can see how much they have to offer, and I can see how inherently worthy they are of the love that they want, and when I can see how much they struggle with accepting that, I'm like, ooh, what's my version of that? And that question, what's my version of that, has been such a life-changing question for me and working with clients, because and whether it's something that I judge that they do, I'm like, oh, what's my version of that, right? What are the ways in which I'm judgmental of other people, or what are the ways in which I project, or what are the ways in which I close myself off, or I try to project an image of myself versus showing up with authenticity. Absolutely. I could not have written this book without them. This does not just be based on my own life story. Like, this is about literally what I have learned from working with so many people for so long. Yeah.
I love that. And I think something that I want to make sure that we put in before the end of our conversation is, a lot of people will say, well, this sounds great, but where are you now? And did you meet the love of your life? Which I want to say, well, I think you are in a relationship.
Yes.
Right, okay, fine. Unless that, we did, just for context of this recording, we did record about a week ago and then realised we were at TED together.
I did not have a breakup in the last week.
So if there was a breakup in the last week, that would have been really inconvenient for that moment. But I'm glad to say you did not break up. You're still happily together.
Yeah.
And you actually met in person.
We did, yeah.
So you developed this amazing concept in the book called the Meet Cute Mindset, the MCM. I have to make sure I got that right.
Yes, you did.
And you have these 7 pillars of how you can foster meeting the right person.
Yeah.
And I really agree with it, actually, because if I get everyone just to think about when they're standing in a queue, whether it's for a restroom or whether it's crossing a road or whether it's getting on a train, how often are you looking down and not looking up?
Yes.
That's where I relate to this.
Yes.
I'm always looking down. I'm always answering an email or a text message.
Most people are these days.
And banging into someone and then apologising and then moving on. Or finding an orderly queue to stand behind. So can you quickly talk me through about how we can be more receptive to opening love through these 7 pillars in the MCM framework?
This was another life-changing thing for me in my own love journey, because I used to watch Sex and the City. And I would be like, this show is so unrealistic. Every time they leave the house, they meet a man. I live in New York City and I never meet anyone, right? And after complaining about that long enough, I started to actually get curious, right? And then I started to look at the friends that I knew, because I would always have some friends who would be like, oh yeah, I'm going on a date with this guy that I met yesterday. I'm going on a date with this guy. And I'd be like, where are you meeting these men, right? But then I realized, okay, I took it as an experiment. And this is my challenge to anyone who's listening to this, watching this, who feels like they don't know how to meet people organically as they live their lives. Just use this as an experiment. Take this on and okay, I'm going to see how adopting a meet cute mindset can start to change my love life. So the first and most important pillar is the belief that every time I leave my house, I have the potential to meet someone special. Okay? Doesn't matter where you go, because wherever you are, there are other humans, right? And serendipity is a real thing. And just starting to notice, okay, if that's true, then what might I need to do differently? Maybe I don't need to be looking down at my phone all the time, right? Maybe I do need to leave a little bit more time so I'm not in such a rush all the time, right? I need to leave my house a little bit earlier so I can walk a little slower, so I can take a moment to notice my surroundings, so I can start to develop more comfort with making eye contact and maybe smiling and maybe saying hello. And just these little baby steps to start to just show yourself okay, actually, oh wait, I did have a nice interaction with a stranger in the queue at the market. That was nice. And also, another pillar is to just be willing to make someone's day and have a moment of connection and not be so attached to the outcome. Because every person you meet is not going to be the love of your life, right? But the more normal that becomes for you to start to meet people and to start to engage and to start to be open to your surroundings, then the more you are courting that serendipity. And if you have that intention because that you do want to meet someone, you will. Like, things will start to happen. Like, that's one of the things I talk about in the book is like the power of intention, and setting those intentions. And so I really, really encourage people to look at what are the things that are showing up in your life that might be blocking you from meeting people, right? Start being in more environments where you're being pushed to be a little bit more open and to have more interaction than you normally do, and see what happens. Allow yourself to be surprised, right? The world is full of people. Serendipity is a force of the universe. It is something that you can court with your intention. And that is really what the Meet Cute mindset is all about.
I love that.
Yeah. And it only takes one, which is another pillar, right?
Well, you met your partner on the corner of a corner of a crossroad?
So that was my last relationship. We met on a street corner.
Sorry.
I know. Well, no, but it was a great relationship for 7 years. It was a wonderful partner.
Yeah.
But we met on a street corner in LA. And people are like, no one walks in LA. Well, I was walking and he was actually about to get an Uber, but he was there, right? And my current partner I met at a conference. So, I'm a very big advocate of people just, even if you're using apps, do not be solely dependent on the apps. Like, don't give the apps that much power. You live in a world that is full of people, and you do not know who you're going to meet. And even if you're somebody who dates women, and it doesn't matter, you might meet a man who's like, oh yeah, he tells you about a show, or tells you about a restaurant, or invites you to a thing, and you go and maybe you meet somebody there, right? And it's like, so just being like excited and open about like, ooh, how is this going to happen? Like, what is the most unexpected way that I can meet someone? Because it is going to be unexpected. So the more you can embrace that unexpected nature and get excited about it versus feel like it's never going to happen, you take it on as an experiment, as a challenge, and see how much you can surprise yourself.
I love that. I think all of those things are so important. And if there's anyone that's either in a relationship or single, because you can be in a relationship and feel alone, right?
You can feel more lonely in a relationship than you do on your own.
100%. I really agree with that.
Yeah.
For anyone who's feeling maybe disheartened, because I think, we're hosting a dinner tomorrow evening, and the title is Hope. And I think more and more people today are growing up with less hope in the world, with AI looking to take jobs, people potentially getting married to AI. We're in a loneliness epidemic. We're in a mental health epidemic. We're in an obesity epidemic. So many epidemics.
Yeah.
We're growing up with a lot of pressure. And I say we're growing up as I mean like the younger generation are kind of coming up now with more force in them than ever before, of maybe feeling just very disengaged and disheartened. And I think that fluxes through society at any age. We can all go through our life, whether we're in a relationship now, whether we're single now, whether we're feeling like we're unsure of where we're going. What's like the one piece of advice that you would give to that person who's listening?
Just know that relationships and successful relationships are all about having certain skills. And all skills can be taught, they can be learned, they can be strengthened. So no matter how unskilled you might feel right now at dating, at relationships, at connecting with other people, at making a friend, any of those things, just know that you can get better at it. And does it take some courage? Yes. Does it take some patience? Yes. But it takes that, but it's worth it. And start where you are. I believe that we are all on a lifelong love journey. And it doesn't end when you get in a relationship. It is ongoing, right? And so I really believe that the purpose of this journey is for us to learn to be more loving towards ourselves, towards other people, to receive more love. And if you can really have a growth mindset about your ability to connect rather than feel like I'm supposed to have it all figured out, the more you can have that growth mindset and have that self-compassion, right? Our favorite
word. If you guys don't leave with self-compassion after this episode.
Like, if I knew a way to do this without self-compassion, I would tell you, but I don't know a way to do this without self-compassion, right? And so for so many people, that's actually the thing that is holding them back, is just the fact that they are so hard on themselves. and that they beat themselves up so much. And if they were just to start to practice, like, okay, I'm going to give myself a break. I'm going to try something new, right? I'm going to open myself up more. I'm going to challenge myself to go and make a friend, right? I'm going to challenge myself to show up with some more authenticity. I'm going to challenge myself to learn how to flirt. I have a whole chapter in the book on flirting.
Yeah, she has 8 points
There's
on flirting.
so many styles
Quickly, just
of
give
flirting.
me one now.
Okay, here's one that I think people don't realize. Attentiveness is a style of flirting. So have you ever met a person, and it could be in any setting, and because it's very often, you meet people and it's very like, oh yeah, how are you, very polite and surface, and you're, oh, I'm good, you're not really taking it in. But sometimes you meet people and you're like, wow, this person is really paying attention, right? Like they're asking me questions and they really seem to care about the answer, right? And if you're able to let that in, it feels good because you're feeling seen, you're feeling acknowledged, right? And that's what, like, at the essence of flirting is making another person feel seen, special, and acknowledged.
Absolutely. Do you know what I just learned earlier today?
What's that?
Don't ever ask someone what they do. Ask someone what inspires them.
Yeah, so much better. What you do is a really bad question.
But I feel like that's what people would ask on an app, or when they meet someone for a first date, or if you don't know someone, they're like, oh, so what do you do?
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I mean, in the UK, there was this big thing called blind date, where it's like, what do you do and where do you come from? And you're like, hi, I'm Sarah.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's just this block that you kind of shut down. And I thought, actually, asking questions that inspire people is really beautiful.
It really is. And that's a form of attentiveness, right? When you're asking people questions that are like genuine questions, it's like, okay, what are you excited about? Like, that's going to tell me so much more about like what you value and like who you are than like, oh, tell me about your job that you may hate. And now we're sitting here talking about your job for 30 minutes on a date. And then you're like, yeah, there was no chemistry. Yes, because you just sat there talking about your jobs the whole time, right?
Totally. Yeah, it's like a work meeting.
Right, exactly. So the more that people can, even that, like I tell people, I'm like, come up with some icebreaker questions. Like you don't have to like be on the fly and figure everything out in the moment all the time. Like if you know that maybe you struggle with like asking interesting questions or having better conversations, then like literally you can go on the internet, you can search like icebreaker questions, conversation starters, you can come up with your own, you can be inspired by others and start having deeper conversations with people. And you can have deeper conversations with people when you're at a dinner party, when you're on a date, when you're in an elevator,
Hollywood film.
exactly. Like have your meet cute moment. I mean, that is the most realistic part of romantic comedies to me, is all of the different ways, unexpected ways, and those moments where you encounter somebody and there's just, for whatever reason, you're able to like actually be in that moment and be present and then be like, oh wait, there's something interesting about you. There's something intriguing about you, and letting that flourish and letting that grow.
I love that.
Yeah.
So Francesca, the last question. Should I ask all of my guests? And I wonder what the answer will be.
Me too.
What does live well, be well mean to you?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. For me, I think that living well and being well is living a life where I really feel like I get to show up every day as myself and to connect with people, because human connection is what life is all about. And just allowing myself to be surprised, by how connection unfolds and the depth of connection, because I just love going deep. Like I just do.
I love that.
And I just think that, that's what makes life worth living, and that's no matter what else is going on in life, if you have relationships that feel really connected, then you're living well and you're healthier, you're happier, you're more confident, and that just leads to more good things.
I mean, I'm going to pop that in with a stat.
Please.
Because that's what I do. An amazing psychiatrist and professor at Harvard, he did the longest study of adult development. And this study spanned over 80 years. And it investigated what contributes to a long, healthy and happy life. And a core finding of the study, which was led by Robert Waldinger, probably have said that wrong, but
Sounds good.
You'll be kind to me, guys. I know you will. Self-compassion there. Emphasizes the crucial role of strong relationships in promoting well-being. So people that had closer connections with family, friends, and community were linked to greater happiness, better health, and a longer lifespan.
Yeah.
So generally, like, we look at the longevity culture now today, and I talk about this a lot. We look at like supplements and our exercise regime, but actually
biohacking.
Biohacking,
Yeah.
that's one of my least favorite words of all time. A friendship and a community and a relationship is a biohack.
It is.
And we really can try and optimize our life from the beginning to the end of the day and forget one of the most important concepts, which is our social interactions.
Yes. Yeah.
And I do think it's important to really like not put pressure on here and say this is just romantic relationships. This is also our friendships and our communities and our families.
Yeah.
And so making sure that we invest so much time in the whole part of the show is getting people to live well and be well in their lives. And love and connection is, I think, at the epicenter of it.
I totally agree. And I think there's so many opportunities for connection. And even if it's the person who's making your coffee, you can actually look them in the eye. You can say thank you.
100%.
You can like ask them how they're doing. And if they ask you how you're doing, you can give them a genuine answer. Like, you know, those micro interactions, you know, that's another thing. There's been a lot of research done. It's not just about like, yes, your romantic partners and your best friends and your family and and your coworkers and all of that. That's great. But also the people that you may never see again. You can just build in more and more of those moments of connection. You will be happier. You will be healthier. You will have a more fulfilling life. And the first chapter in the book is called Centered Love. And that's what it's all about. It's about taking romantic love off of this like special pedestal and just bringing it down where all of your other relationships and every other aspect of your life lives, which is where you are at the center and you get to choose to bring love to everything that you do.
And that is living well, being well.
That is living well and being well. Yes.
Thank you, Francesca, for
Thank
all of your
you.
insights on love. And I hope people leave with more love for themselves to start.
Yes. Thank you, Sarah Ann. Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun.